Oh, gee, I've got.
There's, I see Gary.
Oh, there he is. Good.
Yeah.
He got here.
Gary's here. So I think we've got everybody now. Okay, well, we just have a few minor housekeeping items to and then we'll have you all talk about the Bikeshare. And Nate, I'll ask you to introduce the Bikeshare speakers tonight, if you would, when we get there. Okay, so we're going to call the meeting to order. This is the Town of Kensington Town Council meeting for Monday, December 13th. So welcome, everyone. We're going to start out with a moment of silence. I certainly want to lift up the people that lost their lives, their homes, their businesses, and their entire community for the tornado on Friday evening. I think everybody's seen the pictures, and it's just devastating. And I think it should all give us pause as we put in perspective some of our minor inconveniences and brief disruptions that we have within our own lives, and that just put them in perspective that that our community is together. Whatever is broken can be fixed within a reasonable amount of time because the resources are there and our community is intact. So I hope everybody remembers that as we, get upset because a squirrel may have tripped our transformer and we're out of power for a few hours. So let's just put everything in perspective here. And I have to say, I watched Mayor Onan of Mayfield on TV, and I can just only imagine what is going through her head at the time. I mean, it's not the kind of thing we sign up for, and yet she did a great job. So, so if we can, is there anybody else that wants to lift up anything?
Just real quick, I'd like to add my aunt to the list. I shared this with Tracy privately, but my aunt passed away last Friday. She was, very ill with early onset dementia, but at 83 years, she had a wonderful life, 61 of which were spent as a Dominican sister in the Catholic Church, and touched a lot of lives across the country and across the world with her ministry. But to me, she was just Aunt Kay. She was a really neat woman who, gave me a lot of depth and perspective early in life to what kind of Tracy was just talking to, that there's a lot of bigger grief out there. And so, I just want to lift her up and say a prayer. I will miss her dearly.
Thank you, Connor. Anybody else?
Tracy, I was just going to add to hold in remembrance the woman who was killed on November 18th on Connecticut Avenue in the accident. I think most everyone probably knows about that by now, but in Chevy Chase View, it was resident Miss Belford. I know that they're mourning deeply over there, so if you could hold her up as well.
Absolutely. Okay. Anyone else? All right, well, if we can lower our heads for just a moment. Okay, thank you very much. Council, you all received the minutes from our November meeting. I didn't see any back and forth of corrections. Was there anything that you didn't get a chance to forward to Susan and Matt? Okay, if we can get a motion to approve the minutes.
Move to approve the minutes from our November 2021 council meeting.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, Nate, if you would like to introduce our speakers tonight.
Great, so we are, it's great to have Sandy Brecker and Gary Ehrenrich from Montgomery County Department of Transportation joining us today. You will all remember Sandy joined us 2 months ago to talk about the county's climate action plan, but they're back today talking about a very specific issue and in many ways relates to the action plan. But it's on the agenda as the Bikeshare program, but hoping based on previous conversations with Sandy that we'll go a little bit more broader to to talk about micromobility issues. The county has transitioned, or I should say it's in the process of evolving their program for Bikeshare, and initiated conversation with Sandy back, maybe about a year ago, following up from some conversations Bridget had with her back in 2019 about maybe getting a Bikeshare station here in Kensington and why that may or may not work. And that evolved into conversations around electric bikes, scooters, dockless bike stations, and so on. So we agreed to bring Sandy and Gary back to talk about updates in their program. I think everyone will also remember that Kensington opted out of the pilot program for e-bikes and scooters and dockless bikes. But I believe that technology has evolved, improvements have been made over the last couple of years. So we're welcoming them back to hear an update on their end and to answer questions, hopefully from our residents and from the rest of the council members. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to you, Sandy, and thanks again for joining us 2 times in the last couple months.
Well, thank you, Nate, for that introduction. And actually, as you noted, these are not unrelated issues. And in fact, they're not unrelated to what we were just talking about, the devastation that has just been experienced as well. There are some articles just recently, of course, about that and how these storms, climate change may not cause the storms, but it can very well make them much more severe and much more devastating. And so the program that Gary and I are going to be talking about is one small element of what the county is trying to do in terms of offering people alternatives for transportation to get from point A to point B, from home to work, et cetera, in a non-polluting and non-greenhouse gas emitting way. So keep that in mind as we discuss this. So Matt, I believe you have our PowerPoint teed up. So if you want to go ahead and put that in, and we'll get started. I only have about 200 slides, so it won't take too long. I'm going to actually go very quickly through some of these. This is one I can go very quickly through. Go forward.
Can you see my slide?
Yes, you
Okay.
could advance. Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I want to start talking about Capital Bikeshare because I know that the town was very interested in the Capital Bikeshare system. And then we'll move on to some of the broader micromobility options as well. The Capital Bikeshare system is a joint system that is owned by the 7 participating jurisdictions in the region. And the bikes can move across all of the area, the entire region. So the jurisdictions are listed there. There are about 5,000 shared bikes, about 600 stations. The average size station is probably around the 15, 17, 19 dock station, but as we'll talk about, they can go very high. And if you've been in downtown DC, you've seen some that are, north of 25, 27 docks. So what's pictured here, you can see is about 7, maybe 7. This was maybe an 11 dock station or 15 dock station. A full station that's in balance has about half bikes and half empty slots for docks, so that someone can either take a bike out when they arrive at that station or dock a bike when they arrive with the bike to return it. As I said, bikes can go anywhere in the regional service area. This system more recently was acquired by Lyft under a contract with the governments, with each of these jurisdictions. The original system launched in our area back in 2010. Hard to believe that. We launched our system in the county a couple of years later. Bike transit. Bike transit. It is not the same as a bike rental from a bike shop or other rental agency. It's designed for point-to-point, relatively short trips. And originally it had to be station to station. For the pedal bikes, it still is required to be station to station. However, there's a dockless component to it now, where the e-bikes that have been incorporated into the system can be parked outside of stations on a dockless basis at public bike racks within a sort of delineated service area. And it costs a little extra, it costs $2 extra. The pedal bikes aren't permitted at this point to do that because there's no locking mechanism for them, but the e-bikes can be locked. This system is designed to complement other transportation modes. It's not designed for all-day rides. It's not designed for, for recreation. Not to say that people don't use it that way, but it's really supposed to be short trips to connect point to point, and especially first mile, last mile connections to transit. We also have what's called Cabby for All, which is an equity program. We actually started an equity program here in Montgomery County first among the regions to offer free bike share and free mileage to people who qualify on an income related basis. That program, as I say now, is regional. So you can go to the next slide. So this is the service area within Montgomery County. It's actually taken from their online map. The www.capitalbikeshare.com is the website, and you can get a lot of information from that website. The area that's outlined here includes all of the stations that are in Montgomery County, and then that expanded area where people can ride an e-bike and be able to dock it without going to a bike share station. So I can fast forward. The stations themselves are solar powered. They are modular in design, so that's why they can change the numbers of docks that are in them. They're not bolted down. Don't let anybody know that. They're so heavy that nobody can come by and just lift one of these modules off. They are not wired in to the grid. They are in general. Now we have a few where we have required in some of our development agreements to have conduit installed so that if in future they do not get adequate solar access as trees get larger, shadows change or whatever, that they can be wired. But and the electricity cost is very minimal to operate these. They don't have much in the way of power. They just have to power each of the docks for the release mechanism and power the kiosk where people pay. So it's very, very low. Years back, we got an estimate of something like $12 a month in electricity cost. But in any event, they are not generally electric powered. The sizes start at 11 docks, and as I said, they can go up quite large. Next slide. Another component of the system is there is a rebalancing vehicle. When I show you the costs, as you pick your jaw up off the floor, you will understand that because it's a labor-intensive system. They need to have people out there rebalancing these capital bike share stations, and of course maintaining the bikes, etc. So one of the criteria, as you'll see on another slide, is that there be a location for the van to park nearby. Actually, I'm not sure it is on that slide, but there needs to be a place where the van can park, will not be causing any safety issues, and can pick up and drop off bikes, have the tools accessible, etc. Next slide. So the criteria, at least 4 hours of direct sunlight, they prefer more. Safety considerations, each location has to be evaluated from that standpoint. They have to be very visible and easily accessible to the public. We don't want them off in a dark corner somewhere. This is a 24/7 operation. It's low impact on pedestrian motorist sight distance is a big part of the safety element. Having adequate clearance on the sidewalk or the street for pedestrians, for wheelchairs, etc. There are some criteria in terms of how far from the curb it has to be set back so it avoids having any, incidents where vehicles come too close and hit something. Free of obstruction from the standpoint of, manholes or person holes, tree boxes, etc. Close to transit and major employment sites. So we want these to be tending to be in more developed, highly developed areas. Boom truck access is something that people often don't think about. There can be overhead wires that prevent a station from being able to be installed because they lower these with a crane. And then usually we try to place them on more minor arterials, although sometimes they are on major streets. The pedal bikes, of course, well, I shouldn't say of course, they are permitted to be ridden on the sidewalks, the e-bikes not. But we'll get into a little more of that. And then generally speaking, we like to have them be a short distance apart so that people have options as they're riding to be able to go from point A to point B being where they're going to dock the bike. And so a mile, there are a number of stations that are beyond a mile apart in the county because we are less dense than downtown DC, for example. But we do try to have them be within a reasonable distance of each other. So next slide. And these, we're not going to go into this a lot, although you can see the weight on some of this, but I just thought you might want to have this for future reference. So I put the slide in. Next slide. So here are the costs, and these are actually a few years old because, as I've discussed with Nate and some others, we haven't been adding to our fleet here. We haven't been adding stations recently because operating costs are quite significant, and the county has been, as you probably appreciate, in fiscal, constraints within fiscal constraints, and so. This is typical of what the costs are. They're a little bit higher for capital costs, possibly slightly around this level, or maybe a little less on annual operating costs. But generally speaking, this will give you an order of magnitude. In general, also, the note says there, we don't usually install an 11 dock station. It's very hard to keep these smaller stations in balance, and balance is what I was indicating, half bikes and half empty docks. So 11 dock stations, once a few bikes go out, now it's out of balance. And there are some criteria in our contract for these, for the vendor on how long a station can be out of balance and what they have to do. So that implies staff and people getting there, et cetera. Okay, next slide. So here are the costs for riders. And again, the website is there for more detailed information. It costs you $1 to initiate a trip if you're not a member, if you're not an annual member. And it costs you 5 cents a minute for a classic bike ride and 15 cents for an e-bike. There are passes available. There are a lot of different options, and so you can see that here. For $95 a year, someone can join as an annual member, pardon me, and then they don't pay the same rate. So, and then listed on the side are some other special programs that we have, corporate memberships, the Capital Bikeshare for All, et cetera. So, oh, and note at the bottom, the e-bike parking, if you park at a station, you don't pay extra. If you park outside the station in one of those lavender or purple areas, you do pay $2 extra to park away from one of the Capital Bikeshare stations. Okay, next slide. And then here again is another slide on what the costs are. And this has a comparable slide for micromobility later in the presentation. So one thing I want to, you can go to the next slide. One thing I want to point out is that in Town of Kensington, you would need probably at least three stations probably to cover the area within the town and have it be an origin and destination kind of link. The closest area to you would be Wheaton, but there aren't any stations in between Kensington and Wheaton. And so that would be, and it is, I would note, an uphill ride. So people might be more inclined to use e-bikes for that. But nevertheless, you need stations to be at locations that are, an origin destination pair. So then we'll talk about the dockless vehicle program. But I do want to pause for just a minute and see if you had any questions about the Capital Bikeshare system.
I have a quick question. So you said 3 stations in the town would probably would work. Do they all have to be on property that the town owns, or can they be on private property?
Well, we have done stations on private property. You do need an easement. You need, obviously agreement from the property owner in order to put the station in, and it does need to be accessible to the public. In some cases where we've had private property owners who didn't want them to be right on the outer edge of their property, but somewhat in, then we need an easement for access as well to get it to the station. But we also need an easement for the vendor to be able to, maintain the station.
Okay.
But they can be on private property.
Okay. And how does the CABI program work? The equity?
Oh, CABI for All. Yeah.
Yeah, sorry.
CABI is a nickname
CABI
for the Capital Bikeshare system. Yeah.
Okay.
So CABI for All is a program where if someone qualifies for any of the income-based assistance programs in the county, they can get Capital Bikeshare for free. They do not need to become a member, and they don't pay. Actually, there are some changes afoot with regard to the system. We have given them unlimited rides and unlimited extra time beyond the 45 minutes that an initial rider is permitted when they take the bike out. But nevertheless, they get a lot of free elements to the program. So they basically don't have to pay for commuting based types of things. I mean, if they take the bike out for 2 hours, yeah, there are going to be some charges, but in essence, they get a free bike program, free capital
Okay.
bike
Is
share
that
program.
where, do they get a special card? I've never used one of these, so I don't know. Really
Yeah,
how it
they
works. Or it's an app.
they get, it is an app, and it's also a key that they put in to the station when they go up, just like an annual membership key that those folks get. It's a key fob. It's not really literally a key, but it's like a thing that you insert, and that identifies the user.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Sure. Okay, so any other questions now?
Yeah.
Or I can take them at the end. Yeah, go ahead.
A couple. Building on the Cabby for All. Do you know how just the total number of users that are making use of the Cabby for All program?
Oh, we had, I think the last time I looked, somewhere around 70 or 80. But don't quote me on that, Connor. I will, if I can get that number for you.
Yeah, that'd be great. And I don't know if it also, how many miles or trips, or, I mean, I just think it's great that that program is out there. My hope is that maybe it's a newer program and maybe it's just growing, but my hope is that that number would be higher than that.
I might say, can you hear me?
Sure.
Yeah, Gary.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Thanks. I might say that this program has evolved, and the people that are in the program rotate. They don't stay. New people come, some people drop out,
Right.
and so we maintain registration. We have outreach to try to sign people up. But that's an excellent question of how well is it being used? Is it being used by essential workers, or to get to school, or to get to transit? And those are good questions. I don't have answers for that.
Yeah.
I don't know if Sandy has or not.
No, we don't have a really easy way to track what purpose the trip is. We can certainly track origins and destinations. We don't do that. I mean, we can. There are privacy issues with regard to that, but we do have surveys that have been done. Yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't.
Go ahead.
I wouldn't. There's no need to know where they start or where they end. It's more of a curiosity thing. How many trips are being generated? How many miles are being ridden or minutes are being? How
Right.
fully is Cabby for All being used, and what can be done to more fully use Cabby for All?
Yeah,
and does
it's
it
an excellent
does it come down to
question,
the
yeah.
location of the stations, right? Like,
Sure.
you guys have all this data. What can be learned from it as far as station placement? Does that, is there data that can help drive some informed decisions of where stations may be needed? And I see, from the map, I see there's a gap between, call it the 355 corridor, and then the little bit of Wheaton, and then down to Silver Spring. And I know that we're in the middle of that. And that goes to my next question of trying to place stations between a third of a mile and a mile apart, and now understanding that, optimally you would want Kensington to have, 3 stations. That helps put them close. But what are the next closest stations to Kensington? Because my guess is they're all well over a mile away.
Yeah, I meant to measure the distance to Wheaton, but Wheaton would be probably the closest. There are several stations up in Wheaton, and there are stations.
You have
Go ahead,
Grosvenor.
Gary.
You have Grosvenor.
Well, right, that's over on
And
the
you also
355
have
corridor, right.
you also have Purple Line, where the Purple Line meets Connecticut Avenue, the Chevy Chase Lake.
Oh, that's a good point. Right, we have one station that is
And
there
then
along.
obviously once you're on the Purple Line and the Capitol Crescent Trail, once it gets built and open, you'll be able to go from obviously Bethesda to Silver Spring, with lots of other opportunities for stations.
So what would happen? How does the program work if, let's say, Kensington's just having a great event, because we always have great events, and somebody pulls up to one of the stations and the station's full, right? And let's say we don't have 3 stations, we just have 1, or all 3 of our stations are full. What is their responsibility then? Ride the bike all the way down to Chevy Chase Lake?
In theory, that's correct. They have to go to the nearest station that has open docks. For the
And then-
pedal bikes. For the e-bike, they have the option to leave the bike.
But if it's a pedal bike, then they need to go take it to, let's say, Wheaton or Chevy Chase Lake and then walk back.
Well, that's
Right.
why we need stations. That's why we need at least, you said optimally 3. Yeah, I suppose I would say optimally maybe more than 3 for that reason. But yeah, that's part of the constraint of the system. And that's why the dockless system does have, more potential in terms of spreading throughout the county than, and that's one reason why it has more potential.
But
So-
the dock bikes, though, keep them in place. So you always kind of know where they are. I mean, there's an incentive to return it.
That's true. That's
Okay.
true. And when I get further into this, we'll talk about how the two systems have become more similar.
Okay.
And maybe that's where you're going next, because when we last talked about this, one of my concerns from working in Crystal City, which ironically, in a building outside where that photo was taken, is the dockless bikes were being put anywhere and everywhere. They were being put on handicapped ramps. They were putting them in the middle of sidewalks. They were putting them in front of curb cuts to parking garages and the fire access routes. And Crystal City, the BID had enough of it, and they just started gathering up the bikes and telling them they didn't want them anymore. And then DC has moved to, you have to lock them to a stationary object.
Well, right.
What is Montgomery County's rules?
Right. Okay, well, let me get into the next part and then we can talk about that.
Well, then the short answer
Okay.
is it's evolving.
Yeah,
We're watching-
it is.
We're
It's
watching
constantly
DC
evolving.
very carefully
Right.
because they only started it October 1st. And most of the equipment that DC has and uses, so some companies are using that same equipment in Montgomery County because we're much smaller. So
Right.
the equipment already seems to have some of that docking capability, but we're studying it and looking into it.
Yeah. So let me just go quickly for those who aren't. It sounds like you are, Councilmember Crimmins, very familiar with the dockless vehicle program. I don't know if everybody here is. I can sort of fly through this, and then if you have some questions about how that works, I'll be happy to answer them, and then we can get to some of these more tricky issues. So these are shared e-bikes and e-scooters that are available for short-term rentals, similar to the Bikeshare program, but they don't have docks or stations like the traditional Bikeshare systems. They are intended to provide door-to-door transport. They can be parked close to the final destination as long as they're properly parked, and the rides are accessed through a mobile app, payment portal, and other information all available that way. The user pays a small upfront rental fee at the start of each ride and then a per minute charged, similar to Capital Bikeshare. There are multiple private sector operators for these systems, and they are operating in most of the jurisdictions actually around our region, but at no direct cost to the county here or to these other jurisdictions because they are private sector operations. The vendors that we have in the county are required to sign an MOU with us to permit them to do business, not because the scooters are being ridden in the public right of way, it's because they're doing business in the public right of way. So next slide, please. And why did we start this program? We want to improve personal mobility choices, and it supports a number of the county executive's goals as listed there. It's consistent with our department's vision, and it answers a broader need as has been demonstrated by others in the region. Next slide. Personal mobility being, again, first mile, last mile connections to transit and employment, and certainly other purposes. During COVID, as Gary was alluding to, we had a lot of use of micromobility by essential workers because transit was very compromised. People were concerned about getting on transit. This way they had an individual ride and they could, use these systems very effectively. And we had some programs where they were allowed to use them for free during that period. This is broader access for minorities and underserved communities. Probably a lot more people than the 80 I was mentioning for Cabby for All. Low cost, private sector interest has been demonstrated from developers and property managers, supports our TDM program goals and definitely climate change, both Bikeshare and micro, the e-scooter e-bike program does, and reducing auto trips and parking demand in areas where that's an issue. And then we did have initial interest from the cities of Tacoma Park, Rockville, and more recently Gaithersburg. So next slide. So a little while back, Baltimore, who had a program operating in larger scale than we did a presentation about a survey they had done. And I thought it'd be interesting just to take a quick look at some of the results from that and what the reasons were that people were using scooters. As is highlighted there, saving money was one of the key elements, and being more environmentally friendly, and people ride them for fun. So that's a big part of it. And obviously to get around. Next slide, please. So commuting to and from work or school was a major component, and going to entertainment, you know, places where there might be parking issues, or, you know, it might take longer to get to, or whatever. If they're trying to take transit, this connects them with it. Shopping and errands were also very important. Next slide. So this question was thinking about your last ride. This was from Portland. This is not from Baltimore. If a scooter hadn't been available, how would you have gotten around? And 14% said they would have driven a personal vehicle, maybe a car share vehicle like a Zip car or something. And then 34% said they would have taken a taxi, Uber, or Lyft, which also would have been a vehicle on the road. So, you know, close to 50%, this was getting a car off the road. Next slide. So this is a map of the service area for Montgomery County. And where it says Garrett Park down there in the red, Kensington is just south of that. And so it was when we drew the outlines, because Kensington didn't want to participate, we drew around you, but that's why you're not pulled out as a red area, because the boundary actually skirts the edge of Kensington. And so we had our East County service area and our West County service area identified. As we began this, it actually more recently expanded to Germantown. We recently rolled out, literally and figuratively, rolled out scooters in that area. Next slide. So the MOU requires that the riders be 18 or older to rent one of these, show a valid driver's license. They can only be parked within the boundaries of that service area that you just saw on the map. And by the way, that is on our website. Riders cannot end their trip outside one of the designated service areas, and the speed limit is set at 15 miles per hour. E-scooters are prohibited from riding on sidewalks or on streets where the speed limit is higher than 50 miles an hour. And very importantly, they are supposed to be parked in the public right-of-way, not interfere with all the things that are listed there. That's not to say it's been an easy trek on this. When they first rolled out, particularly, we got a lot of feedback about how they were doing the type of thing that Councilmember Crimmins was describing, which was being, you know, parked in inappropriate locations, blocking sidewalks, blocking ramps, etc., doorways. We have found that behavior has improved. This is a culture change. People weren't used to having these out in the numbers that they were seen in initially. And and we've worked with the companies also to make sure that they have controls to try to put things into place, to have incentives, to remind people that they need to park properly, to have videos on their website and in their apps. So we think we're making progress on this. It's not perfect, but we have seen a great decrease in the numbers of complaints that we're receiving from inappropriately parked vehicles. And also, we are able to track some of this through a third-party vendor that we have, where we can see where these vehicles are parked. And of course, while riders over 18 are not required to wear a helmet, we do really strongly encourage that. So that's another part of that.
Do you want to show?
Oh,
do you
go
want
ahead.
to show the do you want to show the video? Is that link?
I don't know if we want to take the time. I can try to show
only
that
2
if we have
minutes.
time. Let me just do a chime check here. It's
We have
Let
a
me see,
fairly
and I
light
just-
meeting if you want to go ahead and show
Yeah,
the video.
oh,
It's-
okay. It looked like you had a lot. Oh, okay.
No,
All right,
no.
well, then
Well,
I'll try.
the video
You'll
was
have to click on that, man.
yeah, the video was
And
produced
hopefully-
in-house.
Right. It's our video. It's on YouTube. Sometimes I'm not
An ad
pleased
comes
with
up.
what comes up ahead of it. Sometimes you have the option to skip whatever it is. But anyway, let's see.
Oops. We lost the
Okay,
screen.
I'm gonna reshare. Let me know if you're able to hear it.
Okay. Okay. Well, it'll be after the ad.
Yeah,
Someone's
so
trying
they
to
have
sell
an
it.
ad
There
there
we
for
go.
someone.
This
There,
is it.
here it is. But I don't hear the audio.
You said you don't hear the audio?
No.
No, I don't yet. Okay, no one does, yeah.
These are our employees.
Oh, I was gonna let them be impressed by our very able
Sorry, let me
models here.
see if it has something to do with when I share. Oh yeah, share sound.
Here you go.
These electric-powered kick
Yeah, no.
scooters are designed to travel on level ground and built to accommodate most adults. Short-term e-scooter rentals are inexpensive and available in many areas of the county. For your safety, e-scooters are limited to 15 miles per hour. Always wear a helmet when you ride. To rent an e-scooter in Montgomery County, know the rules. You must be 18 years or older and have a valid driver's license. Only one person may ride on the e-scooter at a time. Obey all traffic laws and always operate the e-scooter safely and courteously. Where can you ride an e-scooter? In bike lanes, shared roadways, and roads where the speed limit is under 50 miles per hour. You can also ride along the shoulder where the speed limit is under 50 miles per hour. E-scooters cannot be ridden on sidewalks or roads with speed limits of 50 or above. When you finish your ride, don't create a hazard. Look out for your neighbors. Park in the public right-of-way, not on private property. Never lay it on its side or in the roadbed. Park along sidewalks out of the way of pedestrians and away from crosswalks. People with disabilities need to have sidewalk access and will not be able to maneuver around obstructions. Leave at least 3 feet of clear passage for wheelchair users. Parking between a curb and sidewalk is generally okay, but be careful not to damage plantings. On busy blocks, look for specially marked corrals for e-scooter parking. The bottom line? Don't block access. Not to sidewalks, crosswalks, fire hydrants, ramps, bus shelters, or entrances. Need a little help getting started? Visit us online to learn about free e-scooter riding classes. If you have a problem with your rented e-scooter, please contact the e-scooter company directly. Rental hours for e-scooters and other dockless vehicles in the county are from 5 a.m. to 10 p.m. Trips already in progress may be completed after 10. Learn more about e-scooter tips, rules, and regulations at www.montgomerycountymd.gov/commute. Ride safely and have fun.
So if you want to see it again, it's on our website.
We also prepared another video for the police, and because obviously this is new to them, and for state law purposes, an e-scooter and a bicycle are considered motor vehicles. So all motor vehicle laws have to be observed.
I'm really shocked that you can ride a scooter on a road that goes up to 50 miles an hour. That just
Well, I don't think anybody should.
okay.
Well,
But that's the regulation for bicycles as well. So
right, I was just going to say, the same is true for
Okay.
bikes.
Okay. And I have another question. You said it has to have a driver's license. Can you do that with a state ID if you don't have a driver's license? Can you do a state ID?
the MOUs we
You know,
have,
that's a good point.
the
go ahead.
MOUs we have with the companies specify the driver's license. And the reason is that they have to know what the roads, the laws of the rules of the road are. And we have to assume if you have a driver's license that you know the rules of the road.
Right.
So otherwise, there's no way of knowing if someone's going to go the right direction on a one-way street or stop at a stop sign. And for our purposes, that was convenient. There probably has to be some other alternative for others, but we haven't had that issue come. I don't think it's come before us before.
Right. We are updating our MOU. And so we are looking at some of the issues that have arisen, and that question has been raised before, because you don't need a driver's license to ride a bike, for example. And yet you do need to know the rules of the road. So some of these things are still evolving. So next slide.
I had a quick question, Sandy.
Sure, go ahead.
No, just I'm curious. It always surprises me that there's so many e-bike riders and scooter operators that don't wear helmets. Are you doing anything that would encourage or facilitate the renting of helmets, or giving them away, or are you doing anything with that?
Nate, we do. We are. We have training sessions that are associated with the vendors. The vendors are coming to these training sessions. We actually do bike ride training sessions with Washington Area Bicyclist Association. We contract with them to provide these training sessions. And we also have associated with those e-bike and e-scooter training. And so at those sessions, the vendors, we do encourage them to give helmets away, and they usually do. In addition, on the Capital Bikeshare system, we also have helmets that we give away. And we have a very low cost program where they can just ask us to send them a helmet. So we are doing that. But you're right, there are a lot of riders who are not wearing helmets. It's to some extent endemic to the shared scooter and shared bike systems everywhere. That it tends to be, unless someone's a really regular rider, tends to be sort of a spur of the moment decision. Oh, I have to go somewhere. I'm going to hop on a scooter. I'm going to hop on this shared bike. And so they don't necessarily have helmets with them. There have been some different systems tried throughout the nation, actually the world. None of them have been vastly successful in terms of trying to have a helmet associated with that shared ride.
Is there accident data? Is there accident data somewhere?
It's hard. There is. Well, go ahead, Gary.
Well, we track what happens in Montgomery County, and I'm knocking on my wooden desk, assuming it's wood. We've had a program for about 4 years, and we have not had a serious accident on any of these vehicles in the 4 years that we've been operating it. Now, there have been fatalities around the country. A couple years ago in Atlanta, a couple in Austin, Texas, and some other places, one in DC at DuPont Circle. So one of the things, and this is an area we have to review again, it's on this slide as well. We noticed that a lot of the accidents and fatalities were occurring in the dark. And so, of course, we have different seasons. You can't just keep changing the operational hours based on season. So we said 5 a.m. to 10 p.m. would be when these can operate. And we found that there's been pretty good compliance. We can track that. And we think that part of it's the reason of the hours of operation. And the other issue to some extent is that we don't have an overabundance of scooters. So, and mostly in downtown places where they're, the streets are
activity centers. Yeah. Activity centers. Yeah.
Where streets are narrower and lower speed. But in any event.
But another issue, I was just gonna say another issue is tracking data, because if there are incidents, we assume we will hear about them. In Montgomery County, there was one very interesting accident. I say interesting, the person ended up not being seriously injured, but you might have heard about it in downtown Bethesda. We don't have e-scooters and e-bikes rental available in downtown Bethesda right now. This was someone's personal scooter, and they did have an accident with a vehicle where they flipped over the top of the vehicle with the scooter, but they ended up okay. So there are personal scooters out there, and the problem that we encounter is there aren't really good coding systems for the police and the fire and rescue folks to be able to document this and be able to retrieve that data on a regular basis. So we've worked with the police, as Gary mentioned. We actually did a video for the police about e-scooters. But again, this is a fairly new system, and so some of that kind of data tracking is evolving as well.
Yeah, and
So,
we do need to work with the state police and the accident tracking forms, so that there could be a special code when it's a bicycle or special code when it's a scooter. And go but we don't have that. But we
Right.
are very concerned about safety. Everything we try to do is related to safety in one way or another. And we ask each of the operators to give us monthly reports. And part of the requirement
Right.
of the monthly report is, do they have any accidents? And and complaints and other things that they have to report. And that none of the operators have reported anything that was serious at all
Right.
so far.
All right, well, let's keep moving along then.
Yeah, a
Okay.
couple quick questions on that last slide.
Okay.
Gary, 5 a.m. to 10 p.m. Is it restricted if I try to start an e-scooter ride at 10:30? Does the device prohibit me from starting the trip?
It's supposed to.
Okay. And it says e-scooters can only be parked within the boundaries of the East-West pilot program.
Yeah.
Kensington is not in either East nor West, but we have scooters that get parked regularly in our town.
Right. And
So how is
that's
that?
but
How does
there
that
was an oversight perhaps on our part and working with the vendors, because they geofence out, and it's possible that we didn't have the town of Kensington properly coded and geofenced out. So what happens is that the companies contact the operator, the renter, to say that you're not allowed to park here. You're not allowed to end your trip. You're still on the clock if you park it here. And therefore they have charges. And they're also supposed to take a picture of the dock of it being parked. And so those are things that the companies have to try to stay on top of. But
But we
yes,
do monitor that also through our third-party vendor. We do have monitoring to see, and we just realized recently there were some coding errors. Yeah, that's what Gary's alluding to. So we've corrected some of those, so that should be less of an issue. When you say all the time, though, are you saying every day that you're seeing scooters parked?
No, it's
shared
not every
scooters?
day, but we see,
Oh, okay.
we routinely,
Yeah.
we have them. I mean, it's not zero
Yeah.
and it's not every day, but it is
Okay.
enough that personally, where our town crew often has to take time to retrieve them out of the creek or take them off of public or private property. And it's just one of those things where I'm like, how are they
Get
here?
here. Mhm.
I
Well-
think there's one at Town Hall, or there was a week ago, sitting in the parking lot of Town Hall.
And there was a
Well, they
line
get
scooter
there
behind
because someone
Safeway
rides
for a
them.
number of times.
Yeah.
Right.
It's
Somebody
like,
wanted to go there. Yeah.
what do you do with it? You know?
yeah.
Well,
Well-
you call the vendor, and I
We
ideally,
call.
but we call the vendors if somebody reports it to us. We tell them to go out and pick it up, and they're pretty good about it.
And
Okay.
they have a time limit of when they have to respond
Right.
based on when they get the call and how serious it is. If something in the middle of the street or something blocking a storefront that can't be moved by someone else just picking it up and moving it, then there are more serious things, and they have time limits which they have to respond by.
Okay.
So I just will make one last comment that kind of brings together a lot of topics that have been on the agenda today. And that is, I really believe that you guys have safety at the center of this thing, but I feel like it's in conflict with what other agencies in the state and county are also working on. Nate started by unfortunately sharing the story of a neighbor in Chevy Chase View who she was in a vehicle, but there was a major accident along Connecticut Avenue and she lost her life, and it was due to speed.
Mhm.
We're going to talk more about speed later tonight. We have talked ad nauseum about the speed on Connecticut Avenue.
Right.
And then when it says, hey, the rules of the road are you cannot take an e-scooter onto streets that have a speed limit, a posted speed limit of 50 miles an hour or higher.
Mhm.
Okay, great.
Mhm.
We don't have that in the town of Kensington, but what we do have is 35 miles an hour,
Right.
which means that the cars are traveling 50 miles an hour.
Right.
And if
That's
everything
in the
SHA
area.
is telling us is a pedestrian that comes in contact with a vehicle at 45 miles an hour or higher has less than a 10% chance of survival, that includes people on e-scooters.
Yeah.
And we don't have the infrastructure.
Right.
And we're putting these, I feel like we are throwing these modes of transportation out into an ecosystem that is not built for it, saying it will catch up eventually. But in the meantime, I think it's a recipe for potential disaster.
Well, I appreciate your comment, and I would say that that's an area that we're looking at for maybe potential updates to our program and maybe some legislation to allow sidewalk use in certain situations, such as maybe Connecticut Avenue that has so many lanes and is a speed limit.
Yeah, I get it, Gary, but then,
Pike,
then I'm
I
going to
would-
come back and have a comment about these e-scooters shouldn't be on sidewalks.
Well, that was the problem. That's why they're not on there now, because they're motorized, and you know, if your likely chance of hitting someone on a narrow sidewalk with a scooter, it can also be pretty devastating. And there's also the issue with the visually impaired community. They don't make a lot of noise, the scooters. And
It's not just visually impaired. I'm wearing headphones right now. I think other members are wearing headphones right now.
Yeah.
When you walk around, I work in Roslyn, I work in Crystal City.
Yeah.
When you walk around these places, people, the vast majority of the people I see midday have some set of headset in. They are not, and they're on the sidewalk. This isn't crosswalks. They believe they are in a safe area for pedestrian walking behavior. And what I witnessed in Crystal City for years were people getting absolutely plowed into by e-scooters.
Well, that's a very important point.
I will just.
We
it's just-
recognize, well,
I
ahead.
was just going to quickly say that, you know, tonight I was driving home. It was 5 o'clock. It was dark out. For the first time in a long time, I saw a bicyclist. You know, you talk about quiet, just sailing down the sidewalk on Connecticut Avenue. I understand why he doesn't want to be in the street, but pedestrians are on the sidewalk. So if you look at the speed differential between the 50-mile-per-hour car and the 15-mile-per-hour scooter, you face the same speed differential between bikes and pedestrians on the sidewalks. And I don't want to hold you to, you know, account for all of this. I think what we're dealing with is a new technology with growing pains. And we probably had the same growing pains when we were mixing new cars with, you know, horse-drawn carriages.
Horse and buggies. That's correct. Yeah.
And so I appreciate the effort to test whether this technology is compatible with the existing world. But I guess I want to make sure that a potential answer at the end of the test is no, it's not. And I don't want there to be sort of an institutional bias towards it is, and we'll keep trying until we get there. That was part of the reason that I tilted towards opting out of the pilot program. Was I'm happy to let other people experience the growing pains and what I see as some serious safety issues and some nuisance issues. You know, I work downtown DC. I see these scooters constantly, you know, despite the rules, blocking sidewalks, kind of abandoned. And so I'm fine letting somebody else be the pilot here.
Okay,
Thank you.
well, I think that's really good information, and we're continuing to work on safety issues, including looking at speeds of the roadways, which you're going to see addressed later in your agenda. There is the county is very interested in safe streets and working together to try to make those state highways that are higher speeds safer.
Right.
And there's a lot of work to be done in that area.
So let me just run through the last part of this, and then maybe we can, I don't know if there's more to be said, but okay, let's keep going. You can go to the next slide. Yeah. So the MOU, just some of the points about the MOU in terms of what they have to do in terms of posting a performance bond and providing insurance information and parameters about call response times and some other things. And this point about the regular training sessions and public education and how many vehicles they're permitted to deploy in the activity centers. So keep going. That's what the embossed lettering looks like for the incident if a vehicle would be blocking a visually impaired person and they are able to, touch it, they can retrieve the information about how to contact the company to remove it as quickly as possible. And we were the first in, this area to require that as well. Now they're requiring it on all of them. Okay, keep going. And these are just, this is just a summary of some of the parameters that, we've kind of touched on, I think. So, and I do want to mention about corrals, that picture up in the upper right corner. So we are starting to try to organize the parking in some areas so that it's more similar to what the Capital Bikeshare system is in terms of having a location that is designated for returning the e-scooter or e-bike to that area, and particularly the scooters. And so we have what's called corrals that we have been pilot testing in downtown Silver Spring, and we are planning to, move forward with in other areas as well. Now, the key to the corrals is, again, similar to the stations. You need to have enough of them, that they are conveniently located enough, because as noted earlier, this is intended to be just like with a bike, intended to be door to door more than, say, the Capital Bikeshare system. So we want to make it as convenient as possible for people to ride these to their destination and park them appropriately. So having designated areas where the parking is authorized helps with that process. Now, the other element here is the lock 2 requirement that you've been hearing about and is now initiated in downtown DC, where they are requiring the scooters to have a locking mechanism, and they are required to either park them in a corral or to have it locked to a bike rack, or it can be a street sign, it can be something else that keeps them more under control as well. So these are some of the things we're looking at as we're evolving the program. The disadvantage to the lock 2 requirement, and one reason why some jurisdictions have opted not to do that, is it can be locked to something that is a problem. And then if it needs to be removed, it's much more difficult to do so. But I happen to think that that's a solvable problem. I think, in the same way that people's locking suitcases can be unlocked by the transportation TSA, I forget, Security Administration, whatever it is, we can still have locking mechanisms that, enforcement people or, it seems like a low-level problem for the police to handle, but that others that are official could unlock that vehicle. So I think we're evolving the program, as I said, ongoing. Let's keep going.
Hey, Sandy, real quick, just because I think the corrals are
Sure.
neat and maybe a step in the right direction of some of the nuisance stuff. How does it work? What is the pilot shown in Silver Spring, and how does it work? It must be parked in the corral, or parking in the corral is a no-cost feature. Parking outside of the corral is you got to pay $2.
Well, that's exactly what we want the vendors to do. We haven't required it yet, but we have told them that we want them to incentivize people to park these in the corrals. The problem we have is that for a number of reasons, we've only got 2 corrals in downtown Silver Spring right now. As we move forward with the program, it'll be more of an actual pilot to see if we can convince the vendors or require them to incentivize that kind of parking, proper parking. And if we have enough corrals that people can do that. So to be continued.
Who provides the corrals? I mean, it looks like a parking space on a.
Yeah, we are doing it so far.
Okay.
In downtown Silver Spring, we have one that was a parking space and one that was off street. But we're looking to put those in. There's some possibility at the ends of blocks that we could designate, a small parking area in that way. The more frequent they are, the more likely they are to be used. So, okay.
As Frankie said this already, they can be they can also be negotiated to be on private property.
Sure.
Yeah.
As long as it's publicly
course.
accessible. Yeah. And in fact, with some of our development agreements, that is what we're doing now. We used to have development agreements where we were requiring them to put a bike share station in. Now we have developer agreements where we're requiring that they provide a corral for parking for, dockless vehicles. So we've gone over this a little bit here, that these e-bikes and e-scooters currently are not permitted to be ridden on sidewalks, and they can't be ridden on anything over 50 miles an hour. But pedal bikes are permitted to. And Commissioner Bartram, you were mentioning about a cyclist, and that point's been made that cyclists are just as quiet as e-scooters. They're supposed to give warning, just as any rider is, if you are passing a pedestrian on, the sidewalk. But it is legal to ride a bike on a sidewalk, pedal bike. And part of the reason for that is that we just don't have enough bike and non-motorized vehicle infrastructure in the county. We evolved in this way because of the private automobile, and now we're trying to re-evolve in a different direction, and it's taking time, but we are working on it. Our department is working on it. The state is working on it. As you all know, we have this current Transportation Land Use Connections grant from COG to look at that for this area for Kensington. So we're working on it. It's not going to happen overnight, no question. So they have to follow all the bike codes. There is a bill pending at the county council that I wanted you to know about to require certain changes to the program. The county executive is, as you are, concerned about parking enforcement. And we are examining, as we said, the Lock 2 requirements. And we have some possibility of being able to track that and how effective that is if we do decide to go forward with that. But as noted, we haven't had a lot of complaints. It's certainly gone way, way down compared to when we first started this program.
Okay.
Next
How many
slide.
more slides, Sandy,
sure.
do you have?
I don't think I have many more. I don't know. I
Okay.
can't tell.
I have a
where we
couple.
are.
I do
think
want to
maybe-
give an
maybe-
opportunity for the people that are on the call to also ask a couple
Sure,
of questions.
sure.
So,
Okay, I'll try to really speed up here.
okay.
I think you
To be
can
like one of those people that does the ads. Okay, we can probably skip this.
go through that one. Yeah.
Yeah, we can go. Keep going. Fleet numbers.
I think we've been through this.
Yeah,
We've been through
let's
this
go.
before.
Okay.
I think there are
Yeah.
some numbers,
We
some
can-
other numbers that we'd
Yeah,
like.
let's skip forward. Keep skipping. Keep skipping. That's one of our training
Okay.
sessions.
So
Here are
this
some
is
numbers
one
on
of,
the e-scooter use. Okay, Gary. do you
yeah,
wanna
I mean,
speak to
it's
this?
not, yeah,
Okay.
it's not insignificant. So this is during the pandemic. This is what we have through November of this year. The average number of daily scooters. Now this is countywide. So this isn't thousands or tens of thousands.
But we do have many thousand trips. Yes, many, many trips.
Yes, and so, September looks like it was a 687 average daily scooters on the street and 9,000 trips for that month. So for that year, almost 70,000. It doesn't include December. And as one of the earlier slides has shown, a lot of these trips are not, would have been car trips or driven trips.
Right.
So
Okay, we can
it's
go to
not-
the next slide now. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Sorry.
And this is
But I-
also
yeah.
for the same period of time where the trips are. And as you can see, as you would expect it to be in Silver Spring and Rockville, the two largest. North Bethesda.
And council member Crimmins will note that there are some trips shown in Kensington.
Yes. I mean, there are 200. Well, I mean, I don't know how we define Kensington again geographically.
Yes, that's the vendor's definition.
I would say it's Greater Kensington, which would
Right.
include.
Well, Kensington Heights is close to, Metro, the Wheaton Station,
yeah.
Garrett
Yeah,
Park
they have
State
some
is also a
definition,
Kensington
right.
address. That's
Yeah.
close to
But
Grosvenor.
Yeah.
this gives you some place where you can see
Right.
the more higher use and
Right,
where
right.
during the pandemic. So I think it's kind of interesting. I would say that we are very pleased of the usage, but part of the limitation on usage is the availability of equipment. And if the private entities, we were talking to one today, they want to take the winter off as they did last year and not provide, take all their scooters off the street for the winter. I mean, that's their choice. I can't force them to keep them, but that's one of the issues and problems of having a private system. If people become dependent on them and want to use them for first mile, last mile, you need to have availability, or else they won't even look at the scooter as the first maybe a first option that they have. So that's one of our issues
Next
that we have.
slide, yeah. So here's e-scooter charges. And go to the next one. And this is a map, that you can talk to, Gary, if you want.
This just shows where for one day and one day where the scooters were located. And next slide, please, is I think the next one. We now have the ability with the data that we collect to know how many scooters are on which roads. And so as scooters were to come into Kensington, we'd be able to tell you how many scooter rides there were on each segment of your roadway system. So that could help prioritize investment or prioritize, other types of controls that we want to do. So this is really helpful for planning purposes.
Next
I
slide,
also want to say that the average trip is about a mile and about 12 minutes. So that's about how far people
I think this is it. Yeah, and that's just contact information. One thing that mapping system doesn't do is tell you where people would have liked to have ridden. So, for example, given what we were discussing, probably most people would not choose to ride on Connecticut Avenue given its current condition. If there was safe travel along there, that might change.
That's right.
Okay. Any more questions? Sorry.
Just one last one real quick. We started by the investment of what a station costs, both initial and then the annual average maintenance fee for it. Who pays those costs?
The county does. It's our contract with the vendor. We pay the vendor. There is offsetting revenue that comes in through the system. And it has been in the range of 40 to 50% revenue returned, but it varies, of course, according to station.
So that's one of the reasons. That's one of the reasons that we like the dockless system,
right?
The private system, because it doesn't cost us anything. Although we still have to want to provide infrastructure, but we don't have to pay for their operations and their maintenance.
But if we were to, the docked systems, which cost $40,000 per station and $22,000 a year in the annual maintenance cost, who would bear that? If you were to say, hey, Kensington needs 3 stations, and they were to, let's just say, be docked stations, who pays for that?
Well, that's part of the issue. Right now, the department policy is that the people who are requesting the station and want it need to pay for that. There is no budget right now for growing the system, which is why I was saying those costs are even a little old.
I think that's why some developers, they're asked to do it as an amenity, Connor.
Oh yeah, I just wanted it to be said.
Yeah.
Yeah. And our policy in the past had been that the developer would pay capital costs and some of the operating costs, but that policy has evolved to the point where now if there's a new station to be installed, that has to be a commitment for the ongoing operating costs as long as that station is there.
Wow. Okay. All right. Council, do you have any other questions? I do want to we only have a few people on the call, residents, if they want to ask a question, but I wanted to.
I just have one really quick question, because I gather, going into this meeting, my sense of the council was that their major concerns were around the inconvenience factor or the aesthetics or them being just discarded. That's at least what was expressed to me. I think the safety issues that were raised by others are obviously very valid, but I would just, ask the question back to them about, what makes this, the fact that they're electric more unique than just us being broadly concerned about bicyclists in the first place, because we have a significant safety issue there. So I guess why the extra criticism because of the electric nature of these? So I just wanted to put that back out there, because I think that, whether we like it or not, the e-bikes, e-scooters are coming. As Sandy referenced, people are purchasing their own. I know that they're purchased more and more, especially e-bikes. So we're going to see them around. So at some point, we're going to have to be willing to accept this, whether we like it or not. And I guess my question back to you all is, when is the time we are open to this?
You're asking that question to the council?
Yeah, because I mean, there's the safety issues, very important. It's the first time I've heard it expressed like that, though.
Okay.
I'm fine with it, Nate. I think it's awesome. I think people are going to do it anyway.
Well, I
we might
would
as
like
well.
to get, before you're asking the council to take some sort of a, not necessarily
No.
action, but I would just like to get the other members of the community have their opportunity to speak first, if that's okay.
Sure.
Okay. So is there someone from the audience that would like to make a comment about this topic? If you can show your hand or come on screen. Okay, I'm not seeing anyone. All right, so thank you. So council, are you asking for some sort of who would be in favor of this at the moment? Just taking a survey?
Sorry, I was trying to find an unmute button.
Sorry.
No, because I don't even think there's really this, as far as I know, a real decision yet that we propose. Is it to opt back into the pilot program? I don't know. I'm just putting the question back to everybody about, really, we're hung up on the safety issue, but we face safety issues with the pedestrians and the cyclists now. When will you be okay with this? That's my question back to the council.
Okay.
I'll just give a quick answer because we've been at this for an hour and 15 minutes. I look at, Craigslist and Free Cycle, and I can buy a bike for free or $25 or $50. And then having bought the bike, I will be interested in keeping it in good shape, not just throwing it on the sidewalk. And the cost of e-scooters is coming down as well. I actually have one. But so it's not that I question the safety aspect of it. I guess I just question whether we need a government program to run it. All of these options are available to people motivated to use electric or pedal power scooters. And I don't quite understand. And again, I go back to the comparison of the horse and buggy and the car. I get that there were growing pains and there was never a certainty that one was going to replace the other. And I don't mind, kind of messing around with this idea of a government run rental program for bikes and scooters. I don't know that it's going to get, legs and keep going, especially given, like I said, I can get a bike for free if I want to pedal around here.
But you're going to have to take it to the next place. Whereas this program, there's the convenience aspect that's sort of left out of your example,
Well,
right?
If I go someplace, I'm always going to come back to it. And then I'm going to take that bike home. And what I see around Kensington and nearby is, I know that originally the scooter people and the bike people they were trying to analyze, well, do people only rent these things to ride downhill? And when they go back uphill, do they take a bus because they don't like to pedal uphill? And I see places in Kensington, Edgewood and Metropolitan is a good example where I see an electric scooter day one, and then I see 2 electric scooters on day 2 and 3 on day 3. And then a non-carbon free truck is going to come and pick up those scooters because somebody has figured out how to use the system. And again, God bless them. Let them try it. But let's at least have metrics for a program so that we know, is it worth the money? And if we're going to support it on equity grounds, are we actually promoting and achieving equity? Or are we just using that label to sell a program that really isn't viable, that doesn't increase access to minority communities, poor communities? I get that we're in a kind of a market changing new era, and I don't want to predetermine the outcome. I just want a metric that we can measure. Is it a success, and is it something we should keep going? That's all.
Connor, do you want to, excuse me, share your thoughts?
I mean, I'll just try and be brief, which I know is hard. I will not bury the lead. The inevitable is coming, Nate. I know these things are going to come, and they're going to be here. They're going to be ubiquitously everywhere. And the hope is that it is truly reducing car-based trips, and that is the hope. It's just, when do we adopt into the program? And when we did not adopt into the pilot last time, what I've already seen is, wow, some glaring errors in the pilot. There's 205 trips in Kensington, an area that's not even supposed to be in it, which means the geofencing probably doesn't really work. But if we're going to move to these corrals, which depend on geofencing, then I'm sitting there being like, uh-oh, I don't know if we're ready yet, right? I'd like to see more of the bugs of the system be evolved. As Gary and Sandy have said, I just don't like being the first guinea pig on the wheel. And I'm encouraged because from the last time that Sandy was here talking about it, I think it has improved. I just think there's still major issues with it. I mean, honestly, we've got a lot of sidewalk. We have streets without sidewalks. We have a lot of streets with very narrow sidewalks that, even trying to park this thing as responsibly as possible, is going to block access. And even if you park it and it doesn't block access, with the winds that we had the past 2 days, it blows over one way or the other. Now it's blocking access. And that's a minor nuisance, right? An able-bodied person, you, me, Nate, we can go and pick it up and write it and get it out of the way. But a lot of people can't. And then as a small town, the question I would have is, when these things get to be a nuisance, whose responsibility is it, right? Sandy, you talked about enforcement and the county executive really wanting to better, have a better infrastructure for enforcement. Well, whose responsibility is it for enforcement, right? We have the ability to write parking tickets when they're in town. Does a municipality get the right to cite the operator for improperly parked scooters and e-bikes that are in the right of way, in ADAs, in fire lanes? And is that even something we want to do? Like, there's just these things that haven't, and those, hey, listen, nobody has a perfect program day one. So those are just questions that have to be evolved. To Nate, to your point, there will come a day where Kensington will be open arms to all bikes and e-scooters and everything. It's just, are we day one? Are we day 400?
That was your short version.
Yeah, I'll give you my long version another day.
So no, I think, fair points. I think we need to wrap this up, but I think it would be helpful to know from Sandy and Gary, what the potential options are for moving forward in terms of implementing this once a pilot is done. And also, I think we owe it to them to give some feedback on not exactly, but the relative metrics the relevant metrics we're interested in. What do we want them to give us to be comfortable, whether we're the second, third, or fourth guinea pig on the wheel, Connor? You know what I mean? So I think let's keep the conversation open and get the feedback from, also hear from the community. Hopefully other residents are watching this and will provide input. But yeah, just really appreciate Sandy and Gary coming and
Nate,
and talking about it.
Since you chair transportation and possibly transportation mobility, whatever it's going to be called, is there something, has it come through the committee yet? Is there something does the committee want to work more closely and see, hey, we really think there's a way to participate that meets our needs and answers some of these questions and maybe helps and bring a recommendation back to the council? Because I don't even know, has this gone through traffic committee at all? Is there a formal recommendation from the committee to the council?
The committee has not, the traffic committee, as formerly known, has not discussed it, but the working group has, and they're very keen about it. So yeah, I think that if we were given kind of the green light to work closely with them to come up with potential options to propose over the next couple months, I think that would be one way forward.
I mean, that would be my recommendation, whether it's working group and then take it into traffic committee, come up with a recommendation, and then as a committee, present it to the council.
Yeah. Would others be okay with that? Darren, this is still getting the government involved.
Look, I'm more than happy to have some of this, discussion takes place at the traffic committee level, or whatever we're going to call it, because that's public and noticed. Again, I don't know that we can possibly foresee the future, so I don't mind, watching other people breaking the eggs here. If we decide it's an important thing for us, we can jump into that. I just am sort of mindful of the fact that it's, once you start something, it's hard to shut it down and acknowledge that it didn't work. And I want to keep that as a possible outcome.
Can I just volunteer that Sandy and I and our team would be more than happy to work with your committee, Nate. And we worked especially with Gaithersburg to deal with their issues and concerns, deployment, how they were deployed, the kind of conditions. They kind of took a different approach than Rockville and Tacoma Park. But I don't see any reason why working on metrics, giving you access to our dashboard, particularly town staff that might be interested. It's fascinating, and we're willing to work with you on metrics and set up corrals where they could be and work out some of the details. Be a good example of how we can take the next step with a willing community.
Gary, I think that's a really good idea because, I mean, right now, I feel like the residents haven't, yes, Nate's working group are enthusiastic, but that is why they're part of the working group, because they're are enthusiastic about these types of issues. But we need the broader input from our community. I think that would be very helpful. I think our informal poll this evening kind of showed a 2-to-1. With some optimism of maybe looking into having the traffic committee, also weigh in. But I would like to see whether it's, an open forum in which people could provide their thoughts and that are, currently not on this call and aren't going to watch the recording. So I'm in the skeptical camp myself. So I don't think it's my age, but I do think that our infrastructure, it would be very difficult to try to bring this in on a safety matter. So I would be interested in seeing, what our residents more broadly thought about this issue. So because I've only heard the negative portion, I've not heard the positive, which I'm sure there is some. So I'd like to hear that. So I think we're going to wind this up. And I really appreciate you all coming out tonight and giving us this presentation. It was very helpful. And I'm sure Nate will call on you in order to engage with more of our broader community.
Yeah, would like that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Good.
Thank
All
you. Thank you.
Been a
very
pleasure.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Gary. Thank you, Cindy.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Okay, bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Okay. All right, so we're going to move on down to number 2. And that is the updating on the redistricting maps. The county council has approved it. So the town of Kensington will be moving into the District 4 out of District 1. We requested to stay in District 1, but after the council meeting met with the commissioners, it was extremely clear that they were not going to revisit this map. They had other things to do, and there were campaigning to do, and they just were not going to open that box. So they made some minor tweaks last week, which included moving Kengar, basically keeping it in 4, and we will be joining them. So District 4 will have 4 municipalities, which I think people need to understand that that's very helpful. it's better to be in a district with the more municipalities, the better. So, and we will have the third largest municipality in the county in our district, which is Tacoma Park. And we have a lot in common with Tacoma Park regarding highway user revenues, duplicate tax. So there are things that it's very handy to be in that district. And I think it's a good balance. So, but I want to thank Andrew Friedson, who, after a little shaming on my part, did bring up Kengar, and with the help of Gabe Albernas, also got that done. So he did end up voting against it, but for other reasons. But he did get Kengar in there, so I'm appreciative of that. So is there any other comments the council wants to make? I do want to thank Connor, who was also helpful in reaching out to the different county council members to remind them of our letter request. So that was good. Okay, anybody from the audience have a question about the redistricting? I'm not seeing any hands. Okay, so let's move on. Number 3, the housing and building regulations. Matt, do you want to discuss that, or Darren?
Sure, I'll just, staff's working on a draft ordinance that would address a number of issues pertaining to setbacks and some building and housing amendments to our code. These are specifically related to what we refer to as projections, the county refers to as encroachments, along with setbacks pertaining to ADUs. And I know Councilmember Bartram and Councilmember Crimmins, we're going to probably sit down after the new year and kind of finalize the draft and then bring it before the council and the public for additional comment.
Okay, council, you have any questions about this?
No, I would just say that, you know, I think to the average person, fixing the bay window problem that we identified months ago would seem to be, you know, fast and something we could do quicker. But I appreciate the desire that if we're going to open the code and you know, propose a code revision, that we may make it a little more comprehensive than just that. So that's for me, that's an explanation for why this is seemingly taking longer than you might otherwise think it could.
Okay, yeah, part of the problem. Go ahead, Nate.
I'm sorry. I was just going to say, could you give a quick, like a review of what is going to be considered?
So we want to address specifically projections pertaining to not only bay windows, but decks, unenclosed decks, steps, stoops, anything related to projections. We want to actually codify it into our code as opposed to constantly deferring to the county. The issues we've had, and we've seen them recently, not only with projections, but with fences, is the county will pass a ZTA and the regulation will change and we have to abide by it. And it's not something we necessarily want. So by codifying our own projections into the code, we can eliminate that. And there's been a lot of communications from residents within the town very recently with regards to accessory dwelling units and related to some stormwater management. We need to clean up some language with regards to driveway widths and a number of other housing and building aspects. So it will be a revision of the entire chapter. So,
and a good example is when the county allowed 6-foot fences to be in the front plane of your house, and that caught us off guard because we did not specifically address that. So we did get at least 2. Fortunately, one was removed on their own, and the other one was it's not a full fence. It's more of a what do you call that kind of fence there on Lexington Court? It's a
like a hatched fence, right?
Yeah, I mean, you can see through it. So it was more, to keep like a big dog out or something, but not necessarily. So you can still see the house. So it did not, again,
we need to address fence type structures like lattices that are being used as fences is another, issue that we need to address.
Right.
In the code. So,
and I guess what I was also getting at is this is completely separate from any changes we may or may not consider for the code as it relates to Thrive and the ZTAs that have spun off from that.
It could possibly be considered part of that, the percentage of the yard, the setbacks for accessory dwelling units. So we will have a work session on it. So there will be opportunities for us to go down each one. This won't come to a town meeting as a surprise. So I think as, Matt and Darren and Connor pull it together, we'll schedule a work session so that we can go through it, slowly and more methodically, so everyone understands what's being put in. And then we'll, of course, have to introduce it. We'll have a public hearing, then we'll have a vote, and it'll take 30 days to go into effect. So. Okay. Is there any questions from anyone on this issue? Not seeing any hands. Okay. So now I know council reports. Bridget, do you have anything? No? Okay. Nate?
Tracy,
Yes.
you missed the most important agenda item.
Oh gosh,
that
number 4,
has
sorry.
been hotly debated amongst us.
Sorry.
Last couple of months.
Yes, the town traffic committee reorganization. How in the world did that's the problem with Zoom. So on the, I like to go through the town website occasionally to see things that need to be updated and sort of thing. And I noticed that on the committees, it said traffic mobility committee. So I was talking to Matt, and I think the staff did not, because it was just I guess a conversation that we had. We didn't do it in concrete, vote on it. So staff is under the impression that it's the traffic mobility committee. And I think you are under the impression that it's just the mobility committee. So I think we need to clarify. I know for myself, I was concerned that, when I think mobility, I don't think about traffic. And so anyway, so I just want to get this clear. I'm not sure the traffic committee is actually met. Is that correct? I think you were hoping to have a meeting, but something else hasn't happened in order to call one. Is that correct?
Yeah, we're having a delay in our paving schedule, which would have put in the proposed speed humps petitions that we received. But I guess one of the things that I wanted, I guess on staff level, traffic, encompasses a little more kind of what we were doing. So I guess that's what I was thinking, included with the traffic and mobility committee. Because most of the issues we deal on traffic committee are traffic related, speed humps, speed signs, parking regulations, and then, incorporate a lot of what the mobility concerns have come in through the working group. But this is for the council to discuss and decide, so.
Yeah, look, I don't think we need to discuss this a lot. I'll tell you the logic for why I push for this. Somewhat symbolic, but also substantive. So mobility is about moving people, right? So far we're focused on traffic and one modality, which is vehicles, right? I think it is symbolic about what we prioritize and what we value. And if we're gonna, I'm already boring Bridget, I see she's yawning. My fellow co-chair, come on, you're supposed to be with me here. I think that we need mobility there because it's broader. And I think that, framing the committee that in that way says where our priorities are. I'm open to keeping it with traffic in there. I'm fairly agnostic on the ordering of it, but I think that it is an important addition that is broader than just, traffic.
Well, would a good compromise be making it mobility and traffic committee, but mobility first?
Even better.
The
Even better.
MTC instead of the TCM or TMC?
I think that works.
I was going to try and take traffic out of it.
Oh, geez.
Suggest just roadways and mobility.
Just let
That
Nate
is
have
not about
this.
the traffic.
Well,
I like MTC. Let's do it.
As somebody who's been served on the traffic committee almost 40 years ago, we've not solved traffic. So I know that is, so maybe a new, I'm not sure roadways, but I would be fine with making mobility and and
Traffic.
Traffic Committee.
That's fine.
So,
I will point out, it's the only committee that's framed in the negative so far.
okay.
We have
So I would like-
greenscape, the
I would
positive
like to
outcome.
defend
Ethics,
Bridget.
positive outcome. It's not
Call it, give it a
anti-corruption,
symbol and call it the committee formerly known as traffic.
formerly known as traffic. No, I
Bridget
think
and I
that
solved the traffic problem around March 2020, coincidentally with the onset
Oh.
of COVID.
You're
I-
welcome.
We take exception to that characterization. Look, my goal is simply, we have residents who log into our website with problems that they want to address. And to me, mobility kind of evokes mobility scooters hawked by Wilfred Brimley. And so I would like to keep traffic, especially given that, foot traffic is traffic too. And so I'm fine. I don't care what the order is. My focus is, can a resident who has a concern about any of these issues, bikes, foot traffic,
Kitty.
cars, log into our website and find who to complain to and realize it's not me. Okay?
Is that a cat?
Is that who's got a kitty?
whose
Okay,
cat
so
is that?
It's my cat. It's
Or did you act
my-
like that
You have a
wasn't
cat?
happening?
I think your cat disagrees with you.
We safely sent the bird upstairs for this call.
And kept the cat.
I believe it's called Maginot Mentality. We forgot the cat. I forgot the cat. He came.
Very, very fair points. Guys, I think we should wrap this up unless,
Okay.
we need to discuss
Excuse
more,
me.
but I think the MTC group works well.
Okay, Matt, does that fit your does that work for you? Having
It's fine with me, yeah.
okay. So so I think the traffic committee would appreciate the fact that the traffic is still within the title. I think since we are, not running it through them as well, and they're supposed to be the lead committee, but I think that's a good compromise of mobility traffic committee. So the MTC. Okay. Do we want to make a motion on that? So this is actually concreted. Nate, do you want to make a motion?
I've never felt more excited to. So I move to rename the traffic committee to the mobility and traffic committee.
Okay, I
Effective-
did. All right, let's hold on. Did I ask the audience if they wanted to comment on this? I'm sorry if I did not.
No, you did not.
Okay, so not seeing any hands. So go ahead. Is there a second on Nate's motion?
We have one hand, Jack Gaffney, Mayor.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Jack.
Thank you. I appreciate the concerns, but I think Traffic and Mobility Committee would be a much better title. People look at mobility, they're going to say, "What the heck is that?" If you put, you're used to seeing traffic. I'm glad to include mobility, but I would suggest that Traffic and Mobility Committee is a more useful name.
I'm not going to disagree with you, Jack. Now, I think you may be just a little bit older than me, but we're not that far apart. That the next generation is coming in. So I feel like that, we should let mobility, if that's the new term that's coming up, I'm fine with letting mobility go first. As long as traffic's in there, I think that's good.
Yes, it's better to have traffic in there. Again, I think people will look for the traffic committee when they scroll down the website. So again, and we're used to having a traffic committee. So again, I would prefer it be traffic and mobility.
Okay, thank you, Jack. We'll put traffic in a larger font. How's that? So, thank you. Is there any other
Thanks,
comments?
Jack.
Okay, well, we have a motion on the table to change it to the Mobility and Traffic Committee. So, is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Is all in favor of?
I
All right.
Aye.
Thank you very much. So we officially now have the Mobility Traffic Committee. Okay. All right. Now we're going to move on to council reports. Bridget has already, you got to change your mind, Bridget? You good? Okay. Nate, did you want to go next?
Yeah, sure. I have two, I think, and maybe a third, depending on who wants to talk about the SHA meeting. But I just wanted to update everybody that I sent a letter on behalf of the town to Montgomery County Department of Transportation to in support of the town's support for the ride-on Route 4 expansion that would bring service from, would expand service of the ride-on Route 4 between Kensington and the Wheaton Mark Station. So we sent that letter for the public comment period, and hopefully that will move forward, because I think it'll be good to bring people another option, for another non-car option for bringing people in and between town. I also wanted to ask, the second thing was just to ask for get the council's views on this, and I guess a green light for moving forward with our portion of considering the Kensington Parkway shoulder improvements that we had recommended in our working group report for the pedestrian bicycling access and safety working group back in January. One of the 13 priorities was to connect improvements along Kensington Parkway to what's being done for the shoulder improvements south of town. I got an update from the county that those infrastructure improvements are pending MOU between WSSC and the county, and they're likely to be implemented in the spring. So it's about time to start thinking about what our design might look like. And the working group had requested, several members of the working group can actually do these cross-sectional mock-ups, and offered to work with our town staff and the engineer to start putting together some preliminary ideas to float by.
Are these just
the
markings?
council.
Is that what you're, is that pretty much the extent?
Maybe markings. Right now, it's actually a separated bike lane for the shoulder improvement part that's south of town. There's if I remember correctly, that there is a separated bike lane with some sort of separation. I think it's beyond a line. I'm not remembering correctly though.
I'm kind of leery about jumping ahead of the county, just because, I mean, I know it's WGL is the gas company that's doing it, right? Or is it
WSSC. Is
Sorry,
WSSC? No, it's not ahead. I mean, they have the designs finished, and it would just be getting those designs and linking up with it in some way. There's various options you could do with how we design it, or how we would choose to design it. But just getting something to visualize for the county or for the town is really the idea here.
Okay.
I don't have a thought, because I don't know what the actual proposal is exactly. Pavement markings or little sticks are one thing. And I know that down in that area of town, the curbs and sidewalks are fairly new. And I'd hate to sort of, having fixed those or improve them, to dig them up for more extensive revisions. And certainly until we know what the county's doing, because the county seems to be all over the place, listening to Chevy Chase View resident concerns about what that portion of the bike lane would look like, which side of the street it would be on, whether it would take away parking, whether the parking would be separated by a bike lane.
No,
and so,
it's pretty determined. I mean, I just can't remember if there's sticks or if it's a painted line, but they're interspersing parking at 3 points with a separated bike lane. So sometimes it connects with the parking, and it's going to be on the east side. So that's what they're doing. And I think we're talking about just painting a separated bike lane next to the sidewalk. But yeah, I think we still would need to analyze it and study it, right, Matt?
I haven't been connected. The last discussions I was aware of, it was still sort of up in the air whether it was happening and how it would be happening.
Well, if it's just putting something on paper, and that sounds like you're just wanting to make a plan, connecting what they're doing, putting it on paper, and then bringing it to the council to approve it. Is that
precisely
what I'm hearing?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. And maybe working a little bit with the town engineer if there's anything that needs to be discussed on the markings or whatever.
Okay. Well, I do know that, we're supposed to have the bridge MOU or the bid coming
that's
up
right. Mhm.
soon. So I know Matt was concerned about any structural issues that we may have to do there at the bridge. And as Darren said, the sidewalks and the street are relatively new. And then we also have, there's priorities, and I'd hate to, bump another area to bring this back up again. So I want to be, cautious of that. But I mean, it sounds like you just want to be able to move along in the plan on paper, bring it to the council, and then we can, approve it, not approve it, and then kind of try to find out when we can schedule the work.
Exactly.
Is that what I'm hearing? Okay.
That's exactly it. Yeah.
All right. Well, I think that sounds reasonable. Council, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I would love to see what the traffic committee recommends.
Okay. Yeah, will that go through the traffic committee once
Sorry,
the working group?
Mobility and traffic.
I mean,
Sorry.
I think it would. Yeah. That's the,
Okay.
that's what would be the
Okay.
next step.
Okay, good. All right, well, I don't think we need an official vote because it's not an action item, but I think we're in agreement that you can go ahead and start, working with the working group and the mobility and traffic committee.
Great. Thanks, Tracy. I see Joe has his hand up though.
Oh, sorry, Joe, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor Furman. I believe in addition, before the council takes a vote on this, I would really hope that there would be some outreach to the community in what Councilmember Bertram called that part of town. I think it's very important that we not lose sight of the fact that the south side of town is really woefully underrepresented on the town council. And so I think that outreach to the people, to the residents of this part of town would be really, really essential, really, for before the council makes a decision on this kind of matter.
Well, we're not making a decision tonight, Joe.
No, you're not. I know you're not. I know the
Okay.
sequence. You just laid out the sequence, but I am
Okay.
suggesting that in that sequence, you include an outreach to the community before the council even votes on this.
Okay.
Yeah. And Joe,
I
just
just
to
want to make sure,
clarify,
I do not feel like I represent North Kensington. I am intimately familiar with that part of town, and I don't say that in a disparaging way.
Right.
I
Sure.
have
I
been
understand.
one of the
I
more
agree, yeah.
active people trying to move bikes off of Connecticut onto Kensington Parkway because I think it's much more appropriate for the bikes to be there.
Sure. Right. Of course.
And so, but I'm also as committed to a public process where we will not do something without bringing it on an agenda for public comment.
Yeah. And I think that the whole purpose and what I'm asking is to help facilitate that process, Joe, so you can
Yeah.
see what would look like.
Yeah, the more voices, the better, especially from this part of town. And the way that it was sketched out there a few moments ago by the mayor, it sounded like there was just going to be from the committee to the council and a vote, and that would be it.
No, that was just a short synopsis, but it's very similar to what we talked about with the e-bikes and all that. We need a much larger input from the community before we could make a decision, particularly tonight, even though it is on the agenda.
So just to bring both sides together, Nate is committed to taking this topic up in the Mobility and Traffic Committee, and that's a public process. Joe, what's the best way for Nate to make sure that he is getting the word out whenever that meeting gets scheduled? Can you help him?
I'd be happy to, but I'm sure that Councilmember Engel has his means and has his methods,
He
and
does, but there's nothing better
and
than
I
somebody
have
local.
high confidence that he'll be able to make outreach. He does good outreach in this part of town, so.
Nate, you heard him.
I just
Mr.
want to be
Campbell said he's
sure
happy
that
to help.
I just want to be sure that the council is committed to seeking opinions from folks in the south part of town who will be most affected by this.
Okay. Jack, did you have a question?
You're muted.
A comment rather than a question.
Okay.
In discussing the bike lanes, a number of cities offset the parking away from the curb and put the bike lane between the parked cars and the curb. I think that is a much safer way to do things. And in your planning for bike lanes, please take that into consideration.
Yeah, we will. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Don't see any other hands. Okay, so in addition to what we discussed, there obviously to have some engagement with the community before you bring it back to the council. Okay. Anything else, Nate, you want to report on?
Well, I just was wondering if Matt or you will be updating on our SHA meeting.
Oh, if you want to go ahead and do it.
Okay, you're not tired of listening to me talk.
Never.
Well, I'll go through really quickly. There are 10 agenda items that we discussed with SHA. So I'm just going to list them. And if anyone wants elaboration, happy to do so. But we met with the District 3 team, who obviously has jurisdiction here for Kensington. We talked about the eastbound Pliers Mill turn from Connecticut, a lane lengthening there. We discussed the Metropolitan Pliers Mill Concord intersection and the possibility of making a roundabout there or separating it into two intersections. We discussed the road diet study on MD 193 or University, and they gave us an indication that that would be done. They have information in the spring, sometime in 2022 for us, based on that study. We also brought up the issue of the rapid flashing beacon on Wheatley and Metropolitan. Discussed the Dietrich Knowles safety concerns of people crossing over Knowles on Dietrich or along Knowles between Summit and Connecticut. There was a discussion around the solar powered speed sign placing on state roads, wanting to be able to move ours to go on state roads like Metropolitan. We also talked about the Maryland or the MD 185 corridor needs assessment that is being finished this month. They basically studied the stretch from DC border up to University on areas for improving safety and access there. And then we also brought up the issue of the Connecticut Avenue speed reductions and had a conversation around that. Finally, we asked them to put up a no U-turn sign coming south on Connecticut, turning east onto Howard. Across the median there, people are doing U-turns. I think that may be, the Modena lighting proposal and why that was being delayed. In the spirit of trying to keep it relatively quick, there was a lot discussed. It was a long meeting, but those were the topics. I think Matt, Tracy, and I are happy to answer anything on any of those.
Yeah, Darren was also on the call.
Oh, yeah, sorry, Darren was there too.
Yeah, I think that the biggest one, a lot of these things they've heard before. And we didn't get a lot of great feedback that they were going to, we'll look at it. We'll, get back to you on that. There was a lot of that. But we were asking them to lower the speed on Connecticut Avenue. And they are very data driven on accidents. And apparently they don't feel they've had enough. And we're also not in an area that's designated urban enough. I think the closest was Wheaton was the closest urban area. So I'm not sure why we aren't in that section of Connecticut Avenue. So it sounded like our first job would try to be to get designated as an urban corridor, but I guess we're going to need to wait for that study to come out first. Is that the impression, Darren, that you got from the conversation?
Yeah, I think the next step for us is to tell them that their misstep is mistaken and that we are more urban than they give us credit for, because that would facilitate lowering the speed limit.
Right.
Yeah, and I also got the impression that if we had this as a recommendation coming out of our state BPPA plan, the bicycling pedestrian priority area plan, that would help probably. So we'll make sure that that's included as an issue to consider there.
Yeah, I think if we don't have enough pedestrian traffic, I think a lot of it is because people don't feel safe on Connecticut Avenue walking on it. So yeah, but we have a tremendous amount of riders on the ride on Connecticut Avenue at the Safeway, and then on the other side at the Liberty Station. So they've walked there to get to those, and I think more people would do it. But you know, as we saw when we did the kind of our tour, is that walking across the bridge, the CSX bridge, trying to get to the other side of Howard is downright dangerous. And I think a lot of people try to avoid that area. So, but it was a good meeting. So, well, you know, it's kind of like, stay tuned. Yeah, Connor.
Just hawk on Wheatley. What did they say?
Is it spring now? Was that, I think it
Of
was.
what year?
I think next year, 2020. And unfortunately, Derek Gunn, you know, he's gotten he was not on the
Promotion.
call. Yeah, he's got a promotion. So I guess Natasha.
Well deserved. But
Yeah, but
I
we
just need to know who to bug.
I would say Natasha would probably be the person we need to continue to nag, because I think they've put this off for at least 3 years. That sound about right? From the time we
Yes.
started, it got approved for it.
And then it was because of the construction, which to an extent, okay, but
And then COVID kind of,
I'm happy to work with whomever else is interested and very politely send monthly emails.
Well,
I'm happy to be the squeaky wheel.
it took 6 years to replace the median that, over 6 years, the median that, that Pete had wanted to change out. And we got it, but really didn't need it. So,
It is enhanced public safety. No
yeah.
doubt.
So only if you put thorny bushes to keep people from
Yep.
trying to cross Connecticut Avenue in the center, and they don't want that. So anyway.
Nate, just love to sit down and talk to you even more in depth offline about the speed stuff and BPPA and
Yep.
share notes from the different walk-in-Rs and those things, because I think, unfortunately, I my head is exploding with what they're telling us, which it sounds like what we normally get from them, but that is in direct conflict with what they are putting out in a public relations sense of how roadways are supposed to operate and how SHA is changing. So
Yeah, I agree. I think there's more we can do to push.
Yep.
I think it was the kind of couched response they would have. But I think we can do this. So we'll work together on it.
thanks for the update.
Okay. Any questions from anyone else in the audience? Okay. Nate, did you have anything else?
No, thankfully.
We love to hear you.
Is this where I would quickly handle the election, the survey and where we're at, just as an update?
Yeah, go ahead.
I mean, basically the survey suggested that about half the people responding to the survey were supportive of expanding enfranchisement to non-citizens, and half were not. The goal for Nate and me is to present a charter revision, hopefully next month, that sets a standard for how, for who we're looking to expand to, and it can expand to all non-citizens who are residents, or it can expand to some small subset of non-citizens who are residents, and then just put it out there for public process, take public comment, and ultimately we do a vote among the council for whether we support where on the spectrum we support. So that's my goal. I don't want to get ahead of the public process by suggesting where that line should be. I think we set a line as a draft charter revision and see what the public comment is. So that's our plan, and hopefully we'll have something next month.
Well, we have several municipalities in Montgomery County that already allow this. So
right, and so I've spent the last couple of weeks sort of doing a survey of municipalities, both in Montgomery County, New York City just did it, other cities around the country, just trying to figure out what the available options are.
okay. Bridget, you were waving.
Yeah, could we have like a couple points along that spectrum, or at least two? So it's not just, green card, no green card.
Well, I mean, that's where I think the proposal, and I think we can talk one-on-one about this. I don't think we can talk, as a group really. But we could set it at green card. We could set it at green card and work authorization.
Do you want to have a work session on this?
I don't really. I just want to present a proposal, and just figure out if of the 4 or 5 of us, there's sort of a.
I'm happy to harass Darren by text on this one.
I think that most of us, if we're talking after we hear public comment, will say that perhaps the exchange student who comes here and is here for more than 30 days, maybe we don't want to expand it to them. But the person who's been here for 15 years and has green card status, there's and owns a house in Kensington, we don't mind expanding to them. And so I think part of the process of asking public input is what's in the middle that we might be missing. So that I don't want to have like a menu necessarily, because I don't trust myself and my knowledge of immigration law to have a complete menu. I just want to hear from the public and trust that 4, or if we tie Tracy and the 4 of us, will exercise our judgment in a way that people have a chance to review at the next election.
Any thoughts on that comment? Joe?
Yeah, thanks, Mayor Furman. What was the outcome of that poll that was taken? I think the response rate was like 25%, and it was not 50-50. It was, if I recall, it was 47-53 or 48-52.
It's closer than that, I think.
Well, I was looking for
49-51, but I
was looking for the Town Journal issue that had this, and I couldn't find it. But it was the no's were in a slight majority. I think we should not lose sight of it. It was not 50-50. It was close, but it was still clearly the no's were ahead on this one. So I'm a little. I find it's a little awkward, I think, to be referring to something that was not 50-50 as if it were 50-50.
I round. We also took into account the written comments, and ultimately, this was not a binding referendum. It was an informational referendum that we did, far more outreach and sought far more public input than we do for other code and charter revisions that we undertake. I am very interested in receiving additional thoughts on where to draw the line and whether to draw the line. We could end up backing off and limiting, not passing a charter resolution. But I think having started it, I would like to pursue it a little further and see where we end up.
Alex, you were the one who handled the results, I think. Do you remember what the outcome was?
For as far as hard yeses and nos, it was 49-51. And then there were some written comments that elaborated and said they would vote yes if there were some restrictions.
So 51% of the respondents said no.
Correct.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? More comments? Okay. Darren, did you have anything else you wanted to report?
Not tonight.
Okay. Connor?
Just one. I don't have a hard and fast date yet. It's kind of an update out of DRB. The project at 10619 Connecticut Avenue, referred to as the Huggins property, where Hawkins Market is now. They are working with planning at the county level to revise their application, and they put out their public notice that they are set to have a public hearing by the planning board at the county level in early February. I believe it's February 3rd. We have asked them to come back to the DRB and present once more, because their plan is actively being modified with input from the county, and we would like to see it, have the ability to get input, and then make any sort of recommendation on any sort of letter in support or opposition during our January meeting. So I don't have the date yet, but the idea is that somewhere between the 1st of January and some date before our January town council meeting, we will try to have the DRB meeting, and then we will report out at January's council meeting.
Good. All right, thank you. All right, got a few things to report here, and mostly I just want a lot of thank yous that I want for the record. I want to thank McInerney and Associate Realtors for their sponsorship of the dog parade in November. It was extremely successful, and Mark Hudson took the lead on that, and I really appreciate the energy that he and his colleagues put into that event. Also want on our menorah lighting, I want to thank Anna Sachs, Ann Lichter, Susan Gerson, Jen Bodette, and Lindsay Cantor for their participation. John, did you do anything? I look like the women were doing most of the work there, but so I'll give John a shout out too. And I believe I saw Lisa Zellmeyer on the email, as well as Barry Carr. So I want to reach out to everyone who participated in making that a huge, huge event. So very pleased with the turnout. So also want to thank the staff and the council and KVFD for bringing Santa Claus to our tree lighting. Again, another big turnout for that event. I think there's been a lot of bottled up need for people to get out and to greet their neighbors. So that was a big turnout as well. I want to thank for the Light Up K-Town event. If you missed it, don't worry, we're going to have another one next year. It was so successful. So I want to thank the K-Town ladies who were the organizers for that event. And our sponsors, Dish and Dram, and Kyle Richards from her Compass Real Estate. So that's a big, we have a lot of events in town, but we would not have them without the people that organize them. So many thank you to them. Last night I attended what felt like my 50th Thrive meeting. It was the kind of a listening session that was sponsored by the Montgomery County Civic Federation, the Montgomery County Taxpayers League, Citizens Coordination Committee for Friendship Heights, and the Responsible Growth for Montgomery County. Mark Elrich was also on the call, and he spoke, but it was their listening session. So it was a lot of concerns about Thrive, and it was actually kind of interesting. One comment that I took from that was there was a woman on the call who represents, there's an association, the Condo Association. And I guess there is statistics that any condo under 50 units is more than likely going to have to be rentals, because they can't get the support. They're not going to get, they need a certain number of people for supportive ownership. So in case somebody doesn't pay their dues, like if you had a quadplex and one person doesn't pay their dues, that could really mess up the maintenance on the building. And she also got into the loans that you have to get for these to purchase. And she said more than likely whoever got it would pay for cash, and then they would be rentals. So I thought that actually was an interesting comment. There is another county council listening session tomorrow night at 7 p.m. This is the second one that the county council was put out for their listening session. I think a lot of people that didn't make that first one have a second chance of doing it. I also want to remind the council that this Thursday, 12/16 at 6:30 is the Montgomery County chapter meeting. I think it's the legislative session. Is that right, Matt? Yeah. So who is Mark going to be on that call, or I didn't read the whole thing. Is it Mark or the county council?
They've sent invitations to all elected officials, and Holly's supposed to send out an agenda tomorrow.
Okay. So that could be a very interesting call. So if you are able to join that Zoom, Holly sent out the Zoom invite this afternoon, and then I guess she'll be sending out that list of people who will be attending. So lastly, I just want to, we've got our late night Friday. This is the last one for late night Friday for our businesses on Howard Avenue. There will be Christmas caroling on Armory Avenue. That's sponsored by KBDA. On December 23rd, we have caroling. It's karaoke caroling in Flynn Park from 7 to 8. And that's also sponsored by McInerney Associates and the Kensington Community of Churches. So if you're into Christmas caroling, I hope you will join us at Flynn Park on the 23rd. So karaoke, because we learned 2 years ago that people don't know the words when they're beyond the first verse. So that's why we're having the karaoke port. So it should be a lot of fun. There'll be fire pits, there'll be snacks. And I know even though we didn't know the words 2 years ago, it was still a lot of fun. So if you're not busy, I hope you come out. And I think that's all I've got. Okay, so any questions from the audience on anything that we just discussed? Okay, not seeing any hands. So now we'll move down to the town manager and staff. Matt.
Mayor and Council, just a few quick updates. We completed leaf collection on Friday. So the leaf box will be coming off the equipment tomorrow morning and getting ready for snow season. Town Attorney Ferguson completed our bridge RFP. It will be posted later this week to make structural repairs to our 3 bridges in the town. The repairs will actually probably won't take place until the summer by the time everything gets around. And then just a quick update on the tax duplication county bill. In the November chapter meeting of MML, they proposed a draft bill that would codify the tax distributions from Montgomery County to the municipalities. And the executive board met with Mr. Hartman with Montgomery County to kind of figure out a few other issues. And I think Councilmember Bartram may have been a part of that. I can't remember. But they are going to send us the final bill, which would essentially over the next 3 to 4 years, fully fund duplicate services that the town provides that the county is taxing on our residents, specifically related to transportation and parks. Our current budget for tax duplication on services in the town is just under 180,000. And once we're fully funded, it will be about 311,000. So.
This tax duplication has been a heavy lift for the chapter, and they have been particularly Suzanne Ledlow from Tacoma Park has just put a tremendous amount of energy into this, and we owe her a great debt for really pushing this issue and to get the municipalities reimbursed for a lot of tax duplications. For us, it'll be parks and roads. And then of course, for municipalities that have police forces, it'll be, they'll be reimbursed for that as well. Not nearly what we think we deserve, but it is more than we used to get, which was nothing for many years. So, so definitely Suzanne should get a medal for this because she really, I've never seen anybody know so much about it too. She's extremely well-versed in tax duplication. So are there any questions for Matt? Okay.
Just one item I forgot earlier, and it's going to be then go to Matt. One, I got hounded by some younger constituents, and the request was for some new basketball nets at St. Paul Park. Ooh. So big thanks to the crew. They were put up the same day they were requested, and I got to take all the glory from the 4th, 5th, and 6th graders. So if you'll pass it on, that they're very happy kids at St. Paul Park. And then Matt, you just share real quick the improvements made to parking at St. Paul Park.
Sure. For the residents that don't know, we expanded the walking path at St. Paul Park last summer, and we were waiting for the contractor to come back in to mill and pave the 18 parking spaces there. What we did is we were able to also incorporate 2 handicap accessible spaces, and our town traffic engineer was also able to change the parking arrangement in the second and third bank to actually increase the number of parking spaces. So they were striped last week. So we have a couple extra spaces, including a van accessible and car accessible handicap space now at St. Paul Park.
Good. I've seen them chalked out, but I hadn't seen them painted. So that's good.
They look great.
Good. And the connection between the parking space and the path, when will that be done?
We're having an issue with a tree root. So we're looking at some ulterior products. National Park Service uses an old tire material that we're looking at. So I'm hoping that we can get that in soon.
Okay. All right. Okay, anything else? And I did see the box of nets in Matt's office, so I was wondering where those were going to go. So
we had to order more after Connor's request.
Oh, so these are the going into stock. We now have a stock of them. That's good. Okay, excellent. All right, so if we're done from the town manager and staff, Susan, did you have anything you wanted to? You good? Okay. And council, no further comments. We'll move on to public appearances. Is there anyone here tonight that wants to discuss something not on the agenda? Jack?
Thank you. I have several astronomical announcements of events. Tonight, the Gemini's meteor shower will peak tonight into tomorrow morning. They're predicting 120 meteors per hour. That's 2 per minute. Unfortunately, the waxing gibbous moon will interfere with seeing some of the dimmer ones, and the best viewing conditions will be in the early morning hours after the moon is set. On December 18, there'll be a full moon. On December 21 will be the winter solstice. Also December 21 and into the morning, December 22 will be the Ursid's meteor shower. We'll be predicting 5 to 10 meteors per hour. Again, a nearly full moon will make it difficult to see all but the brightest meteors. And lastly, the peak of the Quadrants meteor shower will be January 3 and 4. They're predicting 40 meteors per hour. An early setting crescent moon will make for ideal viewing conditions, especially after midnight. So that's a lot.
Just out of curiosity, do you think Cabin Park is the best place to go for the darkest sky in the town? Jack?
It's certainly one place to go. I used to go to the Rock Creek Hills Park before they built the junior high school.
Oh, right, yeah. Yeah, that would have been.
That's nice because you're up high, so you have a view further toward the horizon.
Right. Yeah, that would have been a good spot there.
Well, you can still go. Yeah.
Yeah, but there's probably a lot of light coming off that school too. So.
Yeah, if they have stuff at night. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, thank you, Jack. Joe.
Thank you, Mayor Furman. The town crew deserves a round of kudos and then some for its fine and very highly responsive leaf pickup last month and into this month. They really did a top-notch job, and as I say, we're very, very responsive. So it's, I always wonder if this non-scheduling approach is going to work, and it seems to work out in the end very well. So kudos to the town crew for its fine work.
Thank you.
Also, a question for the town manager. The 3 bridges in town are which ones, and what's going to be done to them?
The Kensington Parkway Bridge at Kensington Cabin Park. There's a bridge at Kent Street and Frederick Avenue as well. So we get bridge reports from the Montgomery County Department of Transportation there's a number of structural concerns that they have that we'll be moving forward with. So make some repairs.
What are the structural concerns?
The main one is
Briefly.
actually Kensington Cabin Park. It's due to erosion from Silver Creek. So they'll just make some bridge repairs that are based off of the recommendations from MDOT, and we'll go from there. So
How extensive are these repairs going to be, and is there going to be disruption of vehicular traffic for any length of time?
I do not know the answer to that. We're looking at about $150,000 in work between the three bridges. One of the reasons why we're kind of holding off on the bike lanes is we're not sure what's going to happen with the Kensington Parkway Bridge, because there's going to be a permit from the state because it's over a body of water. So
Right.
we're not entirely sure yet.
So the other two are where exactly? They're at Kensington Parkway and
Kent over Silver Creek, and then there's
Kent.
one on Frederick Avenue right in front, right prior to Kensington House. So those are the three
Okay.
bridges that are owned and maintained by the town.
And do you know roughly how old they are?
Not off the top of my head. They're in the bridge report though. So
Which is what, at Town Hall online somewhere?
it's at Town Hall. I can provide you a copy if you'd like to review it.
Yeah, sure. I'd love to see it. Maybe post it to the town website.
Okay. Anything else?
Thanks, Mayor Firm.
Okay, you're welcome. All right, anyone, any other comments from the audience? Not seeing any hands. Okay, all right, well, let's move on to ordinances, resolutions, and regulations. Matt?
Okay, before the council this evening is the introduction of ordinance number O-03-2021, an ordinance of the mayor and town council to amend chapter 4, traffic and vehicles, article 3, traffic control, section 4-302, speed limits in the town of Kensington, to reduce the speed limit along town maintained streets from 25 miles per hour to 20 miles per hour. We'll need the council to make a motion to set the public hearing for Monday, January 10th, 2022 at 7 p.m.
Okay. Does one of the council members want to make a motion?
I will make a motion to
Okay.
to introduce the ordinance and to set up a public meeting.
For when?
I'm sorry, what Matt?
January
I
10th.
had a meet January 10th. And
Yeah. At 7 p.m.? Is that a good time?
guys,
Thank
I'm dying here. Thank you.
Okay. Is there a second?
I'll
Second.
Okay. Is all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Okay, I think we've concluded our agenda. I don't think I missed anything else other than the mobility traffic committee, but we got that. Thank you, Nate, for bringing that to my attention. So I just need a motion to adjourn. Don't all start at once. It's only 9:30. We could stay if you want.
Motion to adjourn.
All right, Bridget. Is there a second? Again, oh, Darren, thank you. Okay, I'm going to go with Darren on that one. Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
All right, thank you very much. We will see
Bye,
you
everybody.
in January 10th at 7 p.m. Thank you and happy holidays. and
Holidays.
Merry
Bye.
Christmas for those who like to be merry. So, all right, good night. All right, Zoo.